Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're going to be doing another episode of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights. We take a look at some of the wonderful animals we share our world with. And today we've got a few remakes, but we've got a lot of really cool animals. We've got some fishes, we've got a couple reptiles, and a lot of ungulates today. I know you guys love your ungulates. And we've also got a badger, so that's going to be very cool to see today. So we're going to be starting off with a little remake by good old Bongo Hardwood. He remade his Scarlet Ibex, not the Sacred Ibex. Really cool guy here. So the Scarlet Ibex, as you can see, is a species of ibex that is from tropical South America and also lives in parts of the Caribbean. And for the most part, it looks pretty similar to most other species of ibis, with the like a medium-sized bird with a down-turned beak and things. But really sets it apart is this really beautiful scarlet color, or this bright red that it's got here. And if you guys are curious, red's my favorite color, so I'm really a big fan of this bird. So really bright color that really sets it apart. And with this unmistakable coloration, it's one of the two national birds of Trinidad and Tobago, I mean. Tried to say too many things at once. And these guys luckily are quite numerous and hardy, so they can survive in a bunch of different habitats, and also are protected across the world, so that means they are least concern, which is very, very good. And they were described by Carl Linnaeus in 1758, and there has been some debates around the taxonomy, especially the American white ibis, which is sometimes considered the same species, but it just kind of is what it is sometimes. But these guys, as adults, they kind of reach around 55 to 63 centimeters or 22 to 25 inches long. The males are typically slightly larger than the females, which is kind of par for the course. And they typically weigh between 1.4 kilograms or 3.1 pounds. Their bills, you can see, are on average 22% longer than the females, so the males have slightly longer bills. And their lifespan is approximately about 16 years in the wild and about 20 in captivity. And an adult ibex has a wingspan about 54 centimeters or 21 inches. And though it spends most of its time, like other ibises, with its beak to the ground, foraging and probing for stuff in the water or in the mud, they're actually very prolific flyers and are easily capable of flying for long distances. And as I mentioned, they have a very large habitat, and they live in these colonies as well. They're found around South America, such as places like Colombia, Venezuela, and Antilles and Trinidad, and they usually hang out in grasslands and places like that. Shorelines, also rainforests, very generous in that regard. And the highest concentrations can be found in the Manaus region of western Venezuela and eastern Colombia, and these kind of fertile forest plains are quite safe from people, and also they are kind of also full of food for them, which is pretty cool. And vagrants of these guys have been seen in Jamaica, Dominica, Panama, places like that. And some have even been made it to the United States, with one vagrant found in the 19th century, with 3 specimens found in that time, which is really, really cool. And I have to admit, these guys are rather cool. We'll talk about these babies. We'll get to breeding. So in terms of breeding, they build like quite simple nests, like there's platforms of sticks that hang out in the trees. And when they'll find them in like mangrove forests and things, where they build these nests. And to attract the female, these males will perform like a variety of rituals, such as like preening, shaking, or bill popping, or head high flights and things like that. And then if the female likes what he's got going on, she kind of goes over and gives him some eggs. So after a gestation period, about 5 to 6 days, the females will lay kind of 3 to 5 smooth eggs that incubate for 19 to 23 days. And after a successful courtship, the pairs will remain faithful and cohabitant and share the parental responsibility of the young. So yep, 2 parents is obviously better than 1 sometimes. And in terms of feeding, we'll get back to the adults, they are usually use their beaks to probe for things in the water. They'll eat lots of shrimp, also beetles, water bugs, crustaceans, things like that. Very, very general in that regard. And they're actually quite sociable and gregarious birds. So they will fly in flocks of about 30 or more, and members will stay close, and mating pairs will kind of arrange their nests with other mating pairs, so they're all together. And for protection, they'll often fly in large flocks that can be up to several thousand individuals. And they often regularly participate in mixed flocks, so they gain the added security from other animals such as storks, spoonbills, egrets, herons, and ducks. So it's kind of just making as many numbers as possible to protect themselves. And as I mentioned, they are very, very common because they are protected and they can at least concern the IUCN, though there have been some regional populations have declined because of things like obviously deforestation and things like that affect a lot of other species. They seem to be, as the most part, doing pretty well. And they are considered national birds in certain places and considered kind of an icon since they're so beautifully red and things like that. So yeah, really, really cool birds, I think. And yeah, nice remake as well. I think it came out much nicer than before. And Bongo Hardwood always does a wonderful job with the birds. And next we've got a cool little reptile here. This is done by Leaf and Ginger Toast. We have got the wonderful Argentine black and white Tegu, also known as the Argentine giant Tegu or the black and white Tegu. These guys are a family of lizard in Teginidae, and they're kind of the largest of the Tegu species. They're almost like a South American version of a monitor lizard. They're very, very cool. These guys are omnivorous, so they pretty much feed on anything, and they inhabit all sorts of habitat, such as semi-deserts, rainforests, and savannas that are found through Eastern and Central South America. And in terms of the description, they're not the largest, but they're quite big, though. They typically have like these emerald green colors, and they're black and white with all these spotted patterns. That's where they get the name, the Argentine black and white Tegu, of course. And as a young Tegu, usually their tails are banded yellow and black, and then they kind of become, instead of these bands, they become black and white as they age. And they're also quite capable of running at high speeds and also can run bipedally for short distances. And they kind of use that for a threat display or territorial display, where they open their mouths and hold their front legs wide to try and threaten other animals or other Tegus. Adult males are typically much larger than female Tegus. They can reach up to 3 feet or 91 centimeters in length for the females in maturity, and they may continue to grow to 4.5 feet or 120 to 140 centimeters. That's for a big male. Females are typically much smaller, but may grow up to 3 feet 91 centimeters in length from nose to tail. They have these beaded skin and stripes running down their backs, and adult females can weigh between 2.5 and 7 kilograms. And you can see they're quite heavily built in the skull there. It allows them also to help eat whatever they can, really, and they have these big jowls. And what's really interesting is that when they reach the age of about 8 months old, as they become juveniles, their sex, they can see the difference because the males will have a big bulge at the back of their tail, like other lizards that represent the hemipenes. And also the main difference is adult males will have these really, really big developed jowls. So it's kind of to say, hey, look at me, I'm a big bad male, and that's how it kind of works. And in terms of their habitat, as the name suggests, they are native to Argentina, but also be found in Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And they are a large, as I mentioned, they're a large reptile. I believe the there are populations in the United States and Brazilian coasts, and they're considered in some places, especially Florida, invasive species because of people that have released them because of the pet trade or just accidental breeders, things like that. It can be pretty bad. Because they often compete with native species, native lizards, alligators, things like that. And they've been found, and they're very, very adaptable, so they can live in savannas, canals, ponds, streams, and really don't care as long as they can have a burrow. They can live in almost any habitat that's like warm enough. And in terms of their diet, they're omnivorous. Juvenile tegus have been observed eating anything from insects to snails, to spiders, to crustaceans, and they'll also eat fruits and seeds as well. And as they grow, they become more and more predatory. So adults will eat like eggs and also small mammals and other lizards, frogs, fish, things like that. And even in adulthood, they will eat insects, and they've even been known to hunt things like armadillos. So that's also very interesting. And as adults, they tend to have blunt teeth, so that means they're a generous feeder. And in captivity, they can be fed pretty much anything, such as mealworms, superworms, crickets, chickens, eggs, small rodents, commercial crocodile diet, thing like that is pretty generalist in that regard. And in terms of their life cycle, they are typically born in the beginning of spring, and when they hatch, they're about 10 grams. Have a look at the female part. We're talking about them, so you can see the females a little bit Might be the male here. I think it's just a different variation. Really, really nice little guy, though. They get up to from 10 grams to up to 8 kilograms within 4 or 5 years, which is almost like an 800-fold increase in their body size. And during this time, they'll feed on anything, as I mentioned. In terms of their behavior, they can be aggressive towards other tegus and can be aggressive to predators. But they make generally pretty good pets. They're almost like a lizard's best impersonation of a dog. So that's really, really cool. And in terms of their breeding, they breed up to twice a year, and they can lay between 18 to 25 eggs in a clutch. And that sometimes is dependent, obviously, on husbandry and things like that. And another really cool thing about these guys is that since they live in their native environments, they do have colder months. They can spend those times hibernating in their burrows. And they're actually able to generate heat that can maintain their temperature a few degrees above the burrow's temperature. So they're partial endotherms, which is also really interesting. And this is something that's also recently been found out. And they've actually been shown to be one of the few partially warm-blooded lizards, because they can have their temperature up to 10 degrees or 18 degrees Fahrenheit higher than the ambient temperature at nighttime, though they only seem to do this during their reproductive seasons, and they show the kind of seasonal reproductive endothermy, which is really, really cool. And yeah, they have been, as I mentioned, they're an invasive species sometimes in Florida. They are banned in some places, eaten for bushmeat. But generally, I believe they're considered least concern. They're quite common. And yeah, a really, really cool bunch of animals here. And again, that was done by Leaf and Ginger Toast. Next, we've got a couple from Leaf and Buffsu. We're going to be starting off with something that's really, really funky. We have got the electric eel. Let's see if we can find the other one. There's one. So this is the electric eel, or one of the species of electric eel, and is the most well-known species of electric eel. This is Electrophorus electris, which is, until the discovery of 2 additional species in 2019, this was considered the only one in its genus. And considering that they are not actually an eel, they're actually more closely related to knifefish, but they have that giant kind of eel shape that they get that name. So in terms of their anatomy, you can see they've got this very, very long body. They can reach up to 2 meters long, or about 6 feet 7 inches, and about 20 kilograms, or 44 pounds, which makes them one of the largest species in their group. You can see their coloration as well as kind of this dark grey-brown or black with yellow and orange on their tummies, as you can see here. And mature females tend to have darker colors on their abdomen, so this is most likely a female. They have no scales, they're pretty much smooth. And their mouth, as you can see, square, and their anal fins extends from their body to the end of the tail, so they're quite long. And in terms of their physiology, they're not too different from other things. And how they produce their electricity is really, really interesting. They have the main kind of electricity organ. It comes up from the nervous system. So it's basically, this organ kind of sends signals through the nervous system with electrolytes, which allows the ion inside in sodium to kind of create a reverse polarity. That means they can generate basically an electrical current that's quite similar to a battery. So what they're able to do is kind of release pulses into the water, which is very, very interesting, using the 3 organs, like the hunter's organ, the Sask organ at the back, and the main organ here, which they use to release electricity. And they can produce, I believe, up to several hundred hertz, which can be used to obviously stun fish and predators. So that's really, really interesting. And in terms of their habitat, they typically are restricted to the Guiana Shield, where the populations live around the Amazon basin and the Brazilian Shield, while the other populations have been thought to be different species now. In terms of their feeding ecology, they feed on invertebrates, but they'll also eat adult eels, may eat fish and more mammals such as rats, and firstborn hatchlings eat other eggs as well, and the juveniles will eat smaller things such as crabs and crustaceans and things. Small things. And in terms of reproduction, they're very famous for this unusual behavior. In the dry season, the males will make a nest from his saliva in which the female will lay their eggs. As many as 3,000 young can hatch from these, and males can grow larger than the females by about 35 centimeters. So they're very, very interesting bunch of animals, rather than just obviously being electric. That's also cool as hell, but in other regards, they're very, very weird and interesting animals. So it's really cool to see these guys in the game. Again, done by Leaf and Buffsu. And we've got another one done by Leaf and Buffsu coming up. We have got the Mahi-Mahi, also known as the common dolphin fish. See the looking guys in here. Look at these wonderful fellows. These guys are surface-dwelling rayfin fish that kind of live around all across the world. They're found in temperate tropical and subtropical waters, also known as the dorado or the dolphin fish. They kind of related to, they're one of two members of family Cophoridae, which is the other member, the Pompano dolphin fish. And they're most common around the Gulf of Mexico, Costa Rica, Hawaii, and the Indian Ocean. So in terms of the description here, they kind of have these compressed bodies with this single long dorsal fin that goes all the way down. And you can see these mature males have quite prominent foreheads here, while females have a more rounded head, and you can see their caudal anal fins are slightly concave, as you can see here. And males can live up to 5 years, or mahi-mahi I mean, though they seldom live more than 4. Females are on average smaller than males, though the average one quart's about 7 to 13 kilograms, or 7 to 13, 15 to 29 pounds, and up to a meter in length. They can really exceed 15 kilograms or 33 pounds, and there have been ones that have been over 18 pounds, but they are considered exceptional. They're also among one of the fastest growing fish in the world, which is also cool, and they spawn in warm ocean currents throughout most of the year, and then the young are commonly found in rafts of Sargassum weeds, and the young mahi-mahi migrate past Malta when where they're called lapelli, and in Sicily they're known as lapuga, and they kind of use fish using these mats and things. In terms of their diet, they're carnivorous, so they typically feed on flying fish, believe it or not, crabs, squid, mackerel, and other forage fish, but they also have been known to eat zooplankton. And they reach sexual maturity about their first year, and usually at the age of 4 to 5 months. And they spawn when they get about 20 centimeters long, and females may spawn 2 to 3 times a year, which can produce over 80,000 to a million eggs per event. And in waters that are up to 28 degrees or 80 degrees Fahrenheit, the larvae can be found year-round, with greater numbers detected in spring and fall. Also, mahi-mahi fish are most commonly found from surface water. They tend to live in pelagic areas. And their flesh is kind of grey-white when raw, and they're attractive with all their colours. And they're quite fast swimmers. They're quite famous, because especially for recreational fishing, they're quite fast. They can swim up to 50 knots, or 92 kilometers per hour, or 57 miles per hour. So, because of their kind of beauty, size, and healthy population, they're kind of considered recreational fish, and they can be hunted pretty much all over the world as long as you don't live in waters that are too cold. They often will look at, like if you're doing a charter, they'll look for frigate birds around the areas. That's usually mahi-mahi. And luckily there's quite popular commercial fishing across the world, but there have been concerns like overfishing and stuff, and there's certain ones are kind of sustainable fisheries, as always make sure the populations are happy and healthy. But luckily they are quite a fast breeding fish, so they're able to handle it a little bit better. So it seems like they are least concerned, but obviously issues like climate change and things could be a big issue. Or another issue is kind of moderate mercury, because they of being a kind of meso carnivore, or kind of in the mid levels of the ecosystem, they accumulate a lot of the mercury that's from the animals below them, so they can be kind of toxic and things like that. But other than that, they're doing okay. Really beautiful fish, if I do say so myself. Leaf and Buffsu always do a wonderful job with these fish, and I think they came out rather well. Next, we've got a really cool animal here. We've got something very similar to the lion tamarin, or the golden lion tamarin. We got the golden-headed lion tamarin. Really, really cool guy here. So these are the golden-headed lion tamarin, also known as the golden-headed tamarin, made by Leaf, Nick, and Squash. I believe that's meant to be Seth, but I'm not sure who made that. It's exactly the person. But these guys are a lion tamarin that live only in Brazil, and they're really only found in the lowland and pre-mountain areas, fragments of the state of Bahia, and they are considered, sadly, an endangered species. They typically live at heights of about 3 to 10 meters, or 9.8 to 32.8 feet in the trees, so they kind of live in the mid-canopy. Their preferred habitat is within mature forests, but with habitat destruction, they obviously can't always live in these well-preserved habitats. And several sources of also seem to have different information on their groups, but it seems like they kind of have social groups that range between 2 to 11 individuals, with the average ranging 4 to 7, so that's kind of generalist. And they typically live in groups of 2 adult males, 1 adult female, and any immature individuals, or 1 male, 1 female, and immature individuals. Or there may be a producing pair, so a mated pair of a male and a female tamarin, that they kind of have their babies, and they kind of will live in their group, or they'll move to their own group. Just depends on which system's kind of more accurate. I think comparing to lion tamarins, the middle one might be the more accurate one, but I'm not going to make a judgment there. They're not actually that well known, and there's not much known on their mating systems. And according to different sources, they kind of may practice monogamous breeding, so they might be pairing off. And some may be polyandrous. It actually can vary a lot within a species as well. And both males and females will invest energy in taking care of young, and the groups will obviously take care of that. In terms of their diet, they're very, very wide diet. They'll often eat things like fruits, flowers, nectar, insects, small invertebrates, also like insect larvae, frogs, lizards, bird eggs, and small snakes. And they're very, very generalist with that diet, so that really helps them survive. They will also occasionally eat gum, but it's also rare in this species because it's quite hard to get gum unless you're specialized for it. And they typically live in a group. A home range will defend a home range of 123 hectares, generally. And in terms of conservation, they are kind of endangered, which is very, very sad because they're at risk, like a lot of other Amazonian species. They're at risk of things like deforestation, population increase of like people, which means ranching and mining. Illegal mining is also a big issue in the Amazon, things like that. And this has caused big threats to their survival, so their populations are endangered. But luckily, there have been a lot of studies into their ecology. There's also been translocation, restoration programs, reintroduction programs, and captive breeding to try and help these guys in their wild populations. And there's estimated to be about 6,000 golden-headed tamarins in the wild. And there's lots of zoos across the world and lots of biologists and things like that reintroducing them. And they're also considered quite a good flagship species for the rainforests or the Atlantic rainforest that kind of these species support as they kind of decline due to habitat destruction and things like that, which just also sucks, but they are lots of people trying to help them, and of course, really, really cool species as well. They're not like quite as bright as the golden line tamarin. They've got this really cool bright head. I think that brings attention to them. I think they came out rather well. Really cool animal. Again, done by Leaf, Nick, as in Nicholas Lionrider and Squatch, which I believe is Seth, but I won't go into that. Next, we've got one from Jen and Leaf. We have got the Mishi's tufted deer, or we're just going to use the full species, the tufted deer. Really, really cute guys here. So this is the male. So there are small species of deer that can be found in central China and northern Myanmar. They are a close relative of the muntjac, and the main way you can tell them apart is that there's a really cool tuft on their head. There's a lot of hair, and they've got these big saber teeth, or canines in the males that you can see here. Similar to like musk deer and things like that. They're quite similar to muntjac in appearances, but they have like slightly leaner appearances. And they're almost black or white or grey in the summer. And they have these white tips to their ears and underbellies and things like that. The tufts can be up to 17 centimeters long, or the horseshoe-like heads that you can find here. So it's quite tall. And their most striking feature is the males have these large canines that can be up to... they can grow up to 2.6 centimeters or an inch long, but can be longer in some rare cases. Some can have particularly big canines. And they're quite a small deer, but they are still larger than most muntjac species. They stand about 50 to 70 centimeters, or 20 to 28 inches tall at the shoulder, and their weight varies between 17 and 13 kilograms, or 37 to 66 pounds, with a short tail that's about 10 centimeters, or 3.9 inches long. And these antlers here that are only really prominent in the males, and they're extremely short, that is almost hidden by the fur. So while we have a look at this wonderful male, I mean, we'll have a look at the female. You can see she doesn't have the antlers or the tusks, but she's still rather pretty regardless. These guys are found mainly in China, where it occurs from south to eastern coast of eastern Tibet. And they typically live in damp forests from 500 to 4,500 meters above sea level, close to the tree line, where they live in deciduous and evergreen forests. And they also like areas with lots of salt licks. That's also pretty interesting. And they're able to withstand minor human disturbances and can be found in cultivated lands, so areas with people and things like that. The tufted deer, they're mainly solitary, or they're found in pairs, and they are considered crepuscular. So that means they really only come out during early morning and late afternoon. They travel in fixed routes throughout their territory, which is defended by the males pretty vigorously. They're quite timid and prefer to hide about, but where they can be well camouflaged and easy to. And when they're disturbed, which they can be easily, or alarmed, they kind of just bark and then they flee and they move in cat-like jumps, which is really interesting. So we'll have a look at the cute little baby deer and how adorable this little guy is as we talk about their breeding. The mating season typically occurs between September and December, during which there's loud barks. Males can be easily heard. The gestation period for these guys lasts about 6 months, and a litter of 1 to 2 is born during the late spring or early summer. Young are usually sexually mature at a year or two of age, and they can live up to 10 to 12 years in the wild. So they're quite long-lived for a little deer. And I have to admit, they are pretty cute. Look at this cute little guy. Look at the little goofy. I'm sure a lot of people will be like, oh, that is cute, because they're cute little deers. And then here's the parents. We'll have a look at talking at dad again. So these guys are herbivorous, and their diet typically consists of leaves, twigs, fruits, and all sorts of different types of vegetation. They're considered a mixed browser, so they both browse and graze. And that means they'll feed on both grass and any types of vegetation, really. They're not too specialized. And in terms of their conservation, their estimated population is between 300,000 and 500,000 individuals. So they have been, obviously, big declines, especially because of overharvesting of large animals in China. Other issues is also habitat loss, which has been a really bad issue in China with so many people. But luckily, they are considered protected in many places, but not protected under national law. And they're part of the Yellow Species Survival Plan, which is part of Association of Aquariums, because they cannot maintain 90% genetic diversity within 10 generations. So they're often working with wild conservation programs to try and bring up the zoo population. The zoo population is actually probably more endangered than the wild population. But they are doing well, and I think they're quite cool. A really cool underrated deer that Jen and Leaf managed to make. Really came out nicely. I think it looks wonderful. Jen always makes some really wonderful mods. Came out wonderfully. So next, we've got by Leaf and Mark. I think this is one of the first mods that we've kind of been seeing from them. We have got an African antelope. We have got the Bontebek. So the Bontebek is a subspecies of an antelope. Or the Bontebek's kind of one of the subspecies, like Belsbok, which is another subspecies. These guys are really interesting. They are related also to the common Sembe. These guys are a tall to medium-sized antelope. They typically stand at about 80 to 100 centimeters, or 31 to 39 inches at height at the shoulder, and measure between 120 or 210 centimeters, or 47 to 83 centimeters along the head and tail. So quite long. Their tail ranges from 30 to 60 centimeters, and in terms of their body mass, they can range from 50 to 155 kilograms, or 110 to 342 pounds, with males being slightly larger and also noticeably heavier than the females. And the Bontebek has these quite chocolate brown colors here, with like a darker face and a darker back, along with a white rump, and these really interesting patterns as well. They're also known for this distinctive white patch on the tail, while this patch is like tan and a Belsbok. And the horns of these guys, you can see they're clearly ringed and they're quite lyre shaped, and it can be found in both sexes and get about half a meter long in the big males, and also the females, not too different in females, and you can see the little guys here. So this is the female, I believe. These guys live in Highveld, where they'll eat like short grasses, while Bontebeks kind of live in the coastal Fibros and Ravostend. These guys are diurnal, so they spend most of their day kind of hanging out. They rest during the heat of the day. They will hang out during like mid-morning, and in the afternoon they'll kind of hang out and feed and things. Usually herds only consists of only males, only females, or mixed. So mixed will probably be usually during the breeding season. And they usually do not exceed 40 animals for Bontebeks or 70 for Belzebubs. So yeah, not too dissimilar. And we'll look at these cute little babies while we're talking about them. So they're not very good jumpers, but they're also very good at crawling under things. And mature males will tend to form territories and face down other males in displays and obviously fight them, similar to other species of antelope. So in terms of threats, these guys were once extensively killed as pests, while their wild population was reduced to just 17 animals until the species has recovered thanks to Janaeus Routes, which was one of the ministers of land in South Africa, who recognized there needed to be a sanctuary to protect these guys. And the following areas showed that about 70 was counted, and then 17 were successfully corralled into a new enclosure and saved them from extinction. The recovery has basically been all thanks to the coalition of the South African government, and they've been kind of extinct in their natural habitat, but they have increased in population, and they're very abundantly farmed and as well. And because they're popular quarry for hunters, and they're easy to sustain, so they're doing quite well, though they're kind of, I wouldn't say they're extinct in the wild, but they are, they're quite common and obviously farmed and stuff and held in places like that. So they're kind of a great recovery from extinction. It's really, really cool. A wonderful animal to talk about. And next, last but most definitely not least, we have got a remake again by Jen and Leaf. I think it was saying Jeef. Something not wrong to it today. But we have got the white-tailed deer. Where's our big male? A big wonderful guy here. A nice remake. Really wonderful. So these guys are also known as the white-tail or the Virginia deer. These guys are medium-sized deer that are native to North America, Central America, Ecuador, and South America, and live as far south as Peru and Bolivia. They've also been introduced to a lot of countries because people like hunting them, such as New Zealand, the Caribbean, some countries in Europe, also the Czech Republic and France and Germany, places like that. And in the Americas is kind of the most common and widespread ungulate. So in North America, the species is found from like the Rocky Mountains or Southeast Arizona all the way to, except lower California, which is usually has lots of mule deer or black-tailed deer. So quite common around those areas. And is estimated to be populations of like in the millions, so they're quite common. And in terms of description, they typically get about usually weigh between 68 to 136 kilograms or 150 to 300 pounds. But mature bucks can get over 180 kilos in their most northern part of their range, or about 400 pounds. So they're quite big. And different, obviously, with such a wide range. And if you've heard of Bergman's rule, that means animals that live more north will often be a little bigger. So it depends where you are. On average, bigger individuals will probably be in the more extreme north or southern latitudes of their range. But in terms of their antlers, obviously they've got quite charismatic antlers. About 1 in 10,000 females will have antlers, but males will usually grow these big 8-point antlers as yearlings, or about 1.5 years old, and will grow that repeatedly. So the antlers will begin to grow during the late spring, where they'll make this highly vascularized tissue that's the velvet. So what will happen is that they'll grow, and then they'll obviously use them to fight with the other males. And then once winter starts to come, they will drop around late December to February. They kind of drop their antlers and kind of regrow them. So in terms of their ecology, with such a wide range, they live in all sorts of different habitats. They live in areas from like Dakota. Some will live in tropical areas, subtropical, just very varied. And it's like amazing how varied it is. All sorts of different habitats. And quite generous in that regard. They pretty much eat whatever they can find. Large amounts of food, such as legumes, cacti, grasses, corns, mushrooms, pretty much anything. And because they're a ruminant, they are actually able to digest a variety of plants. And in terms of their predators, they're often fed upon by animals such as American alligators, jaguars, cougars, wolves. Bobcats will also eat young ones. Grizzly bears will also eat young ones as well. Coyotes and lots of animals such as foxes and corvids and things like that will feed on their carrion. So, being so common, there's often big issues for their control. Areas are kind of overpopulated with deer, and it's kind of partly because we eradicate a lot of their predators, such as wolves and bears and things, are not very common in a lot of these areas anymore, so it allows the deer to kind of obviously run wild. In terms of reproduction, the females will enter estrus like in late October to early November, where they have a rut. And then females will give birth to 1 to 3, normally just one, spotty little cutie like this. And they'll be born to mid to late spring, generally May or June, and they kind of get their first, they lose their spots during the first summer, and they weigh between 44 to 77 pounds, or 20 to 35 kilos in their first winter. And male fawns will typically be slightly larger. And for the first 4 weeks of their life, the fawns will be hidden in the vegetation by their mother, who nurses them about 4 to 5 times a day. And then when they get weaned, they get weaned at about 8 to 10 weeks, but can be seen following their mother afterwards until they kind of lose their spots. And males will leave their mother after a year, and females too. Bucks are generally mature at about 1.5 years, but they probably don't even breed until they start to become older and bigger to compete with the bigger bucks. So human interactions, they're quite common hunting since it's so common. They've been hunted for game, obviously for pure sport as well. People eat their venison, and they've been introduced to places across the world for hunting. And in New Zealand, they're often farmed, along with the United States and Canada as a captive livestock. They're farmed for their pelts, their meat, and their antlers. A lot of the issues has actually been more to us, because there's so many deer that often there's high risks of them getting hit by cars and things like that, but they are doing very well. They consider these concerned with a state that has over 5 million deer. You'd hear they'd be doing pretty well. Really wonderful animals, and we got this albino skin. Came out wonderfully, if I do say so myself. But yeah, really, really awesome. But now we've got another one done by Jen and Leaf. We've got last animal here, last but most definitely not least. We have got the ratel, or the honey badger. Look at these guys over here. Really, really wonderful little guy here. So we know honey badger don't give a shit. So these guys are a type of mustelid, closely related to other badgers, like also, not I think genetically, but like wolverines, things like that. They are found all across Africa, also Southwest Asia and the Indian subcontinent. So they live in a wide variety of habitats. And the only living species in their genus, though they're not closely related to other badger species. They are kind of in that same group of the mustelids. There is kind of a few different subspecies, but most of the time they're considered monotypic because they're such wide-ranging and kind of cosmopolitan species. So honey badgers are kind of the largest terrestrial mustelids in Africa. They measure between 23 and 28 centimeters, or 9 to 11 inches in shoulder height, and 55 to 77 centimeters, or 22 to 30 inches in body length, with an additional 12 to 30 centimeters added on the tail, with females being on average smaller than the males. In Africa, they generally weigh between 9 to 16 kilograms, or 20 to 35 pounds in males, while females are slightly smaller, between 5 and 10 kilograms, or 11 to 22 pounds. And they average about 9 kilograms, but it can also kind of vary. They're actually the third largest known badger after the European badger and the hog badger, and the fourth largest terrestrial mustelid after the wolverine. So not quite as big and bad as the wolverine, but they're also still dangerous little fellows, even though they don't quite have the size. So in terms of their behavior, they're mostly solitary, but they have been observed hunting in pairs in Africa during the breeding season. They'll often use old burrows of aardvarks and warthogs and termite mounds while being quite skilled diggers. And they're quite famous for being quite ferocious and have a lot of strength. They've been known to fiercely attack pretty much any animal, barring elephants, I think. But they've been known to repel large predators such as lions and hyenas from kills. And also they can survive also like bee stings, porcupine quills, lots of animal bites, and even bites from like black mambas and things. And though they are so tough, they're No, there are prey species for some species, such as rock pythons, Nile crocodiles, spotted hyenas, and African leopards. And in terms of their diet, they have kind of the least specialized diet of all the weasel families next to the wolverine. So they'll pretty much eat anything. They'll often raid beehives and find bee larvae and honey. They'll eat those. Insects, frogs, tortoises, eggs, lizards, rodents, snake and berg eggs, berries, roots, bulbs, basically anything they can get their mouths around they will eat. Roots and bulbs as well. Actually, they've been seen chased lion cubs from kills as well. They'll also feed on geckos and skinks. It depends on the area as well. Some areas they will often eat things like pythons and spring hares, or other places they'll eat lots of mice and gerbils, just depending where they are. And not too much is known about their reproduction. As we talk about these, we'll have a look at the cute little babies over here, who came out rather well. So they typically have a gestation period of about 6 months, but usually they'll have 2 cubs, which are both born blind. Their wild lifespan is kind of unknown, though captive individuals have been known to live for about 24 years. And they kind of almost whine and stuff like bear cubs, so it's really interesting sounds. And as I mentioned, they have quite a wide range that can be found through most of sub-Saharan Africa, from the Western Cape, South Africa, through Morocco into Algeria, and outside of Africa they can be found from Arabia, Iran, Western Turkmenistan, and the Indian Peninsula. So they're quite common around these areas. They're very, very wide-ranging. It's kind of similar to European wolverines, well, just wolverines that live across like North Europe and also across Asia, Northern Asia, and also North America. And in terms of their relationship to humans, a lot of people don't really like them because they eat a lot of the poultry. And they're very intelligent, they're very good at escaping things, and very hard to kill as well. And they can survive. They've got very tough skin, and they're able to survive like machete blows, and they're almost impervious to most things like arrows and spears. And the only way to really kill one is like shoot it in the head or something like that. But obviously you don't want to shoot these guys on the head. They're very cute. And but in terms of their range, since they have such a large range, and they're quite common, they're considered least concern because they've just got a lot going on for them. Though there probably has been declines in population, but they're doing quite well, and I think they're rather cute. Let's see if we can have a look at the mother. Where's the mother? There's a mother here. Really, really nice mod. I think there had been other versions of the Wolverine and the Honey Badger, but I think this is kind of the definitive version now. Now they have the the European Badger from the Europe pack. I think this guy came out wonderfully. Jen's done a wonderful job of the remakes, especially with, in the future, here's a little tease for the future, this guys might get antler variation, so that's going to be really cool to see, and that's something I've been asking for a while. Hopefully we get to see like variation in antlers and tusks and horns and things. I think that would be rather awesome. But yeah, enough about that. Wonderful Badger, wonderful everything. I think these guys did a wonderful job, and I think this is going to be a great place to end the video. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys will like and subscribe, and bye-bye.